formally begin, I will
Lovely. Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much. Gosh.
So, Jyothi, can we start? Yes. Okay. So, friends, नहीं, नहीं, नंतर दाल झालं. So, friends, formal program will begin when I would request all the dignitaries to sit on the dais. But I think because of logistics, it would be appropriate if we first have a brief cultural program and then we start the proceedings. Let me, though, first briefly welcome all of you here on a Saturday. I think large number of you have come here to witness what is going to be a very useful interaction on a very important topic of street accessibility. So, without much ado, because I would speak formally once the cultural program is over. So, may I request the students of Mithra Jyothi to first sing a song, and it will be followed by a dance. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Mithra Jyothi and to this wonderful program that we are having with the National Law School as well as the University of Leeds. We now have a small program for you from students of Mithra Jyothi. We will start with a song. Okay? That we now song is a very popular song, so you all can join in the chorus when she's singing.
A very good afternoon to each and every one of you present here. I am Bangalore and I am from the state of Meghalaya. I am the student of Mithra Jyothi. I come for computer course for 6 months. So I'm going to sing for you with a very popular song, We Are the World. So you can join me in chorus if you know the song. So this is an English song. There comes a time when we hear a certain call, when the world must come together as one. People dying, oh, when it's time, the we can go on. There's someone somewhere will soon make a change. We are all a part of God's great big family. And the truth, you know, love is all we need. We are the world children. We are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a better day, just you and me. Well, send them your heart so they know the song and the lives will be stronger and free. Jonas, stones to bread, and so we all must lend a help. We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making, we're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a better day, just you and me. It's true, we make a better day, just you and me. Thank you.
Tina, that was wonderful. Wasn't she great? Yes? Okay. So now we have another very short program. This is a dance, again by the Mithra Jyothi students. So come, Dominic. Dominic, right? Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Mithra. I want to brief something about this song. Uh, this is about the story of a person who been denied and thrown away from the family because of his disability. So he feels himself to finish his life, but somewhere he found an organization like Mithra Jyothi where he gets trained with computer, uh, braille, and audiobooks and mobility, and he proves himself that he can do something in this world very differently from others, and he can achieve the goals as a normal person. Here the song goes.
So, what we just saw was a person who is visually impaired and who has friend tells the person to come to Mithra Jyothi, and they understand all the programs we have at Mithra Jyothi and how he uses all the programs. He learns Braille, he learns digital literacy, mobility, which is so important, the white cane. So he danced with the white cane also. And for my visually impaired friends here in the audience, Dominic is also 100% blind and he danced. So I think we need to give him a very, very big hand. Okay, so now I would like to invite certain people on the dais. Ma'am Ashwatthama, our Deputy Director, please come up on the dais. Dr. Sanjay Jain, careful, careful. No, 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 no. Fire. Please come up and please come up. I'll take you this side. You sit next to Ashwat. Over to you now, Sanjay.
Thank you very much, Aisha ji. Anna, I hope you can hear all of us.
Yes, yes.
Anna, Maria,
Yeah,
can you
yeah, we can
let me
hear
know?
Sanjay. Thank you.
Okay,
It's
okay.
beautiful.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I first thank Asha ji for describing the dance, and now let me come back to the formal nature of this program. Uh, we have all gathered here today as part of, sorry, to commemorate uh, 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 a very important occasion to talk about right to street accessibility of uh, persons with disability. Now, the issue of street accessibility is a very neglected issue, and this issue has received very little attention, uh, both from policymakers as well as uh, by academia, and therefore, Anna Lawson designed, Professor Anna Lawson designed a very important project around 3 to 4 years ago to have a cross continental study of how the streets are inclusive, how streets include people with disabilities, and our journey began. So let me first recognize the presence of Professor Anna Lawson and Maria Orchard, my friends and United Kingdom. They wanted to come to India and address us, but due to some unavoidable reasons, that could not be possible. Then, of course, this program would not have been possible without the cooperation of the two NGOs, National Federation of Blind and Mithra Jyothi. So we have Gautam Agrawalji, General Secretary of National Federation of Blind, and uh, Ms. Madhu Singhal, the Executive Director of Mithra Jyothi. And she's also, I think, the soul of this organization. And she's also founder and managing trustee of this organization as well. And when I was asking her, this organization is uh, almost 34 years old now. And believe you me, when I was talking about this program with various people, then I was interacting with different NGOs, there was hardly anybody who would not know her. So she's such a extraordinarily well-known figure in the city. Uh, Now, without the cooperation of government, you can't run activities, welfare activities, rehabilitation activities, empowering activities. And therefore, we have today Deputy Director and Disability District Welfare Officer from Government of Karnataka, Ashwathama Madam and Krishnamurti ji. So I also welcome them. My teacher and mentor, Dr. S.R. Mittal, is also here. Uh, I think Dr. Mittal is a very is a towering figure in the disability sector in India, and we always cherish his guidance. Thank you very much, sir, for sparing your valuable time. I wonder whether Jayashri is also here because Jayashri was supposed to be here. Jayashri, she's a very prominent disability rights activity. She's a leprosy cured, leprosy survivor person. If she's here, I would like to welcome her. Uh, there are a number of NGOs whom we had invited, and from these NGOs we have representatives, we have caregivers to witness this event, to be benefited by the inputs on right to accessibility. So I welcome all those NGOs. I'm also speaking here on behalf of my own institution, my employer, National Law School, India University, and therefore on behalf of Vice Chancellor, National Law School, India University, Professor Sudhir Krishna. Also, I thank all of you for making it to this important event. Uh, now, uh, before I make brief remarks about the right to accessibility and the existing legal regime in India, to set the context for the lecture of Professor Lawson, I think it would be appropriate if I first request rather, uh, the two partners of this event, Gautamji and Madhuji, to say a few words, and followed by them, then I would request Ashwathamaji to share, and then I would have my say, and then we will witness the piece, intellectual piece for which we have gathered today, the talk of Mr. Lawson. So without much ado, may I first request Gautamji to very briefly set the context
Good afternoon, everyone. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you all to, to this important workshop on accessibility organized by jointly by the National Law School, India University, Bangalore, and Mithra Jyothi Charitable Trust and National Federation of the Blind, Karnataka. Today we have gathered gathered here not just to talk about the accessibility. This is not just this workshop is not just a meeting of the minds, but it is a call to ensure that the accessibility is not is a fundamental right and not just a privilege. We bring the perspective, experience, and knowledge to make our discussion enrich. I would like to welcome all the distinguished guests, speakers, experts, and participants who are here, who have come here to spare their time out of their busy schedule. Friends, I would also like to thank the National University and University of Leeds for giving importance to this very worthy cause and to support and commit to support and their commitment to this. I would also like to, on behalf of the NAB, I would like to uh, have to welcome and to thank the DD Madam, Director Disabled Welfare, for being here despite her weekend holiday. So I thank you, Madam, for being here on our request. Uh, Now, friends, in very quick and few words, I would like to say something about NFB, particularly for those who do not have the much idea of the NFB. Friends, NFB is a leading self-help organization of the blind, which was founded in 1973. Last year we have completed our Golden Jubilee, and it was the celebration of the Golden Jubilee was inaugurated by the Her Excellency President of India, Mrs. Draupadi Murmu. We operate all over the country through its state branches and regional units in most of the states. NAB Karnataka is also one of the state chapter of the NAB India. We have the two folder of our activities. On the one hand, we run some specific service activities where it is highly needed or required. On the other hand, we are dedicated to influence the policy of the public policy and programs for the rehabilitation, employment, accessibility, economic independence of the our visually challenged persons in particular and disabled in general. So through we try to influence the public authorities and public policy through all legitimate and legal means of the advocacy, through legal advocacy, through civil advocacy. So this is what is about the NFB. This is a democratically managed organization. We have the membership, primary membership, and the members of the federation elect its governing body once in every 5 years. Or most of the people, the member of the organization are blind, and the policies and strategies of the organizations are uh, made and executed by the blind members itself. So we have in Karnataka particularly, we have some service projects like we are running a braille and talking library here, state level braille and talking library. Our members can take the advantage of this library or at their doorsteps. We have a aids and appliances store from where the individual with blindness can avail the all type of their day-to-day assistive devices. And we are also involved in conversion of the reading material into accessible formats, whether it is braille, talking, or e-formats. So this much is about the NFB, and I am very happy and feel proud to have this opportunity to be with all of you and uh, to share my views about the NFB. So thank you all of you for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, may I request Madhuji to say a few words?
Good afternoon, one and all. I am really honored all of you are here in Mithra Jyothi's premises to attend this program, which was arranged by Dr. Sanjay Jain, our beloved friend from National Law University of India, Gautam Agarwalji, the General Secretary of National Federation of the Blind, and of course Mithra Jyothi. I would like to once again welcome all of you, and I am really honored that all of you are here from different organizations working in Bangalore, and my very good friends from different disabilities are here. And I also would like to say thanks to Anna Lawson if you are listening me. Also, what is her name? Maria. Maria, friend of Dr. Sanjay Jain, and I would be also Ashwathamma, the Deputy Director, Persons with Disabilities. I Gautamji said, Sanjayji also said that Saturday is also a holiday for her, but I asked her, she has come from very far away, from Yalanka to this place, one end to another, and I am very thankful to you to come to for this organization and the program. Thank you so much. We talk about digital literacy, digital accessibility, but we never talk about street accessibility. I am very happy that you made up this, and we will be hearing from you about this street accessibility, how we can create for the our friends, persons with disabilities, different disabilities. But one thing I will say that this accessibility is not only for the disability, it is for access for all. Maybe one tall person is there, some small thing will be difficult for him. One small person is there. It is very difficult to, you know, go further to for the tall to touch any tall things. So there are always accessibility matters come for everyone, whether a small child or whether it is disabled or anyone. But accessibility matters for everyone. Here I will not take much of your time because we want to hear from you. I will say few words about this organization. Mithra Jyoti is a registered charitable trust. In 1990, 34 years back, if I will go back, I remember we started this organization in a small garage, and today, with the support of all of you and also the my friends, person with disabilities, especially the visually impaired, are sitting here, and I am very happy to say that some of them are here. Those who are connected with Mitra Jyoti from 1990 or maybe before it. To it, the progress of the Disability Convention, and with the help of all of you, we have gone to a big way, and literacy and also the accessibility and every technology really helped us to come up to this level, and I want we should go further and further. We are running several programs like computer training for the visually impaired. We have a braille press where we are preparing braille books, all textbooks, and providing to all over Karnataka. We are having an audio library. When nobody knew about that library will be useful for visually impaired, we are running this library from 1992 onwards. And I am happy to say that how many visually impaired people are sitting here, they must have used one or the other time Mithra Jyoti library. So along with that, we do also help the women for their higher education and so on and so forth. There will be lot of other programs are running. I would be like to invite you whenever you come to India. You are most welcome to visit our organization. I will not take much of your time, and we would like to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhuji, for that wonderful introduction. And I must emphasize Anna that she is very modest about her achievements and accomplishments. But when you come to India, you will witness, and we are already witnessing the monumental achievements of her efforts. This organization, which was started in a garage, now is one of the most well-known organizations of not only Karnataka but even India. I thank Madhuji for sharing her thoughts. May I request the audience to switch off their mobile phones and uh, maintain silence so that we are benefited by the interaction. Uh, Now, my job, frankly speaking, since last 2 3 weeks, I am running from here one place to another, doing so many programs, and therefore, if I don't live up to your expectations in my performance, please forgive me. But I am now required to speak about the legal regime in India on accessibility briefly, and how the same has been translated. Sorry, but I think before I speak, it would be appropriate. I'm very sorry. It would be appropriate if I request the Deputy Director, Madam Ashwatthama ji, to say a few words and encourage this.
Dr. Sanjay, who is on the dais, and the other watch for the madam of this Mithra Jyoti Institute, and the audience, and the persons with disabilities. All know Civil Directorate is doing well in Karnataka. According to RPWD Act 2016, almost all the provisions being included in the schemes of Government of Karnataka. Regarding about telling about the accessibility, actually, first I would like to thank National Federation of the Blind uh, because they're really doing well. Whatever has to happen in the department, they're the first persons to raise the issues. So their involvement is much more in the department. So RPWD Act provides inclusive development for the persons with disabilities. So this is a better forum. I'm immensely happy to be in this forum on behalf of the Director, Department of Different Able and Senior Citizens. It's because such environment is more needed for the policymakers to bring up the schemes. Talking about the accessibility, street accessibility, so we would like to hear from you what has to happen. Inclusive development, you all know, it under RPWD Act 2016, we have we have schemes in Karnataka about almost all the provisions of the RPWD Act. That is, whether it is a scholarship, in-kind schemes for aids and appliances, and for taking away business, other scheme is there, and then availability of digital material for the blind is there. As of now, we have in Karnataka we have issued 1,05,000 UDD cards for the blind and also 43,000 UDD cards for the low vision beneficiaries. Pertaining to all the disabilities, we have issued around 7,80,000 UDD cards. According to 2011 census, in Karnataka there are of about 13 lakh disabled persons. And in India, there are about 2.21% disabled persons in India. In Karnataka, about 5 to 6% disabled persons are there in Karnataka. So, the Department of Disabled and Senior Citizens, every year, by hearing the necessities of the disabled persons, it brings new schemes for the disabled persons. So that's how this year we have brought a new scheme called Incentives for the Four Disability Caretakers, because it's very important. We have brought a scheme like we have to give 1,000 rupees for our caretakers of four disabilities: multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, and Parkinson's disease. So for these four diseases, we have brought this caretakers incentive scheme. So this is how new schemes and new implementations are going on in Karnataka by the Department of Differently Abled Persons and Senior Citizens. So as you all know, for the blind persons, for low vision persons, there is a digital library. So this digital library is brought up by this kind of NGOs, Mithra, Jyothi, and other National Federation for the Blind. These kind of NGOs. So state government is ready to help to start digital libraries all over Karnataka. If any assistance is needed, we will definitely help. So this point is put out from the National Federation of the Blind, Secretary Agarwal ji. So that's how the discussion is going on in the department to set up this digital libraries and to bring out uh, books for the blind children. To start the libraries and all those things. So definitely in future days we'll bring this into the action. So this is how the department is working. If any accessibility is needed, if any help is needed, the department is ready to support. So we want to hear what the things we need to do. So that's how what the things, what the uh, hurdles you are all facing. We just want to know, we just want to hear from you so that we can bring the proper policies in the state. So that's how we'll work together. So actually, the department is working with the NGOs. 90% of the department is working with the NGO implemented schemes only. So that's how the department is working. But see, finally, what I would say is, for the message from the department is, Stephen Hawking's advice is that he's an English theoretical physicist. He advises concentrate on the things your disability doesn't prevent you doing well, and don't regret the thing it interferes with. Don't be disabled in spirit as well as physically. So, this message I would like to pass. So, let's all work together for the persons with disabilities. So actually, the disabled persons don't need the courtesy or something, but they need the opportunities for the inclusive development. Inclusive development means everybody has to be treated equally in the society. So for the disabled person, if they are disabled to achieve something, we have to support them. That support system has to be developed from the society as well as from the government. So in India, all over India, when compared to other states, Karnataka state government is doing well for the disabled persons welfare. So that's how the Karnataka government is doing well. So it's just because of the NGOs and social service providers who always remembers the department, what has to be taken up from the department, what has to be done from the department. They'll be giving hints. So that's why the department is working actively. So that's how we all work together. We really definitely work with your expectations. We'll we are very happy to see you all doing well in the society, living a happy life. Thank you.
So, thank you, madam, for your empathetic approach and your advice that we should always have high spirit. And I think that is important because struggle is everybody's game. Nobody can live without struggle. But at the same time, it is also true that nobody is fully autonomous. Interdependence is now the mantra. So everybody is dependent on the other. We should thrive. We would do well only if we foster communitarian spirit. So thank you very much, madam. Now let me very quickly come back to my mandate of briefly setting the context by shedding some light on the accessibility legal arrangement in India. Now let me briefly look at the RPWD Act, and when I have a cursory look on the legislation, what is striking is accessibility is nowhere defined in the law. What is rather defined in the law is the term barrier. And of course, barrier is defined in all its connotations, be it physical barriers, political barriers, economic, cultural, social barriers. So the law is cognizant of barriers. And law is also cognizant of the interaction of barriers and impairments because disability defined in RPWD Act as an interaction between the barriers and the impairment. So, law therefore is also sensitive to the distinction between impairment and disability, and in a way, law does not conflict the two notions. In other words, the message of the parliament is that disability does not lie in the body; it lies elsewhere. It is rather produced by external barriers. However, this is not the only message because the law is also sensitive to the disabling experiences because to focus on externalities and to assume that disability is only produced by the external environment would imply that we would not pay any attention to the bodily experiences or uh, 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 cognitive experiences of people with disabilities. Indeed, disability impairment itself results in certain conditions, and impairment cannot totally be ignored, cannot totally be lost sight of. And therefore, in India, we have an interactional model where, although we attach a lot of importance to barriers, but we also do not completely neglect uh, the conditions or impairments and the experiences resulting or arising out of such impairments. Now, when we look at accessibility, what connection accessibility has with disability? Uh, it would not be erroneous if I assume that accessibility is an overarching principle as well as it is an enabler right because without realization of accessibility, almost no other right can be enjoyed by persons with disability. For example, I want to uh, go to college and teach, but if the road leading to the college is not accessible, if it is full of barriers, how can I perform my job? How can I exercise my right to employment? Similarly, I want to read a newspaper, but if newspaper is not available in accessible format, then how can I enjoy my right? So therefore, and examples can be multiplied, but it becomes clear from these examples that accessibility is an enabler, right? Uh, if you are able to create conditions for uh, exercise of right to accessibility, you would also create conditions for exercise of other rights. Nevertheless, when I carefully look at the law, I am somewhat bothered because we have adopted a top-down approach for realization of right to accessibility. Because who is under obligation to lay down various standards in various domains for crystallization of right to accessibility is the Chief Commissioner of Persons with Disability. So the accessibility standards should be formulated from Delhi, and then those standards would percolate down to rest of India. However, my contention is that India is such a big country and we are a federal nation. Therefore, why, as basic a notion as accessibility should be governed in a top-down manner, why uh, 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 we should not have bottom-up approach for realization of this right? Why we should not allow the districts and the panchayats and the municipalities to fine tune the notion of accessibility to the local conditions. Now, in reality, because we don't have a full-fledged chief commissioner of persons with disability for a long time, and since most of the time this office is assumed by you have additional charge by some bureaucrat, I have my own reservations about effectiveness of the office of Chief Commissioner of Persons with Disability. And Chief Justice of India, Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud, has recently lamented on the lackadaisical attitude of the government towards the implementation of Rights of Persons with Disability Act. Uh, Now, if you would pay attention to the budget which was recently presented, disability was not even mentioned once. Uh, and although government, uh, whatever government may say, it is a reality, and maybe Karnataka is an exception, madam is here. But generally, it is a reality, at least so far as central government is concerned. If you look at the budget of last 10 years, there is a there is a gradual there is a gradual decrease in the allocation, and sometimes the decrease is dramatic. And along with other sectors, even the sector of accessibility has also suffered due to the decrease in allocation. Uh, but I think we must applaud the efforts of committed officers like Ashwatthamaji here and the committed NGOs like Gautam, Mithra, Jyothi, and NFBs, whose presence leaves some hope and whose presence make us feel that okay, everything is not yet lost. So therefore, I will take this opportunity on behalf of a premier law school of India. I would like to appeal to both the Prime Minister of India and the Honorable President of India to take disability seriously in the governance, because after the ratification of UNCRPD, India is one of the responsible state parties, and India's role in the adoption of UNCRPD has been phenomenal. India's interventions have been really nothing has done to translate those interventions into ground realities. I hope that by using technique of carrot and stick, we would try to convince the government to uh, uh, rise above the politics of sympathy and take people with disability or treat people with disabilities as productive units. Uh, One or two points on judiciary. Judiciary has played a major role in enforcing right to accessibility. And I remember a very important judgment delivered by Supreme Court in Jija Ghosh, where Justice Sikri very clearly held, inter alia, along with other things, that without enforcement of right to accessibility for persons with disability, you cannot afford right to dignity. If you want to treat people with disability with dignity, you need to provide them accessible environment. Similarly, in Rajiv Ratri and disability rights group matters, court has consistently harped on creation of a barrier-free environment in educational institutions and in other domains like streets. Recently, Nalsar has come out with a very interesting report on the accessible educational institutions, how what standards higher educational institutions must adopt in order to uh, be accessible, and I hope that these standards would become the uh, part of the culture of the higher educational institutions. While concluding, I would emphasize that I had the good fortune to be the part of the Supreme Court Accessibility Committee, and we were able to work under the stewardship of Justice Ravindra Bhatt, the Honorable Judge Supreme Court, and we have presented a report to the Chief Justice of India, and we have made a number of suggestions, and I'm happy to uh, say that some of those suggestions have already been implemented, and I hope that court will take the report seriously and would implement it in its letter and spirit. Here too, I must applaud the efforts of Karnataka High Court because Karnataka High Court has done a phenomenal job in providing accessibility training to its staff, particularly its disabled staff, how to handle uh, computers, how to handle other gadgets by using softwares. Finally, I would say that accessibility is accessibility being an overarching principle and a core idea underlying UNCRPD. It should be used as a one-stop solution. Tendency is to focus on accessible buildings or maybe focus on certain domains for attaining accessibility. But what about making the streets accessible? What about making the roads accessible? And I distinctly remember a very interesting point raised by some author when she argues that roads or streets are not sheer landscapes. Roads and streets are not sheer landscapes. Rather, roads and streets are places where minds meet, where we allow one another to mingle. Roads and streets are platforms where ideas can shape. Therefore, I think we should use landscape as workscape also. Uh, as I have already stated in the beginning of my speech, uh, I was not able to prepare properly, and therefore there may be loose ends in between. But I think I have been able to set the context for what is going to follow because now we are going to hear uh, about Inclusive Public Streets project, part of because of which we have all gathered here from Maria and Anna, and then of course Anna will shed light on the notion of accessibility and importance of accessibility. Before I hand over to Anna and Maria, may I request the audience to maintain silence and pay attention to what is going on. Right? Thank you. Thank you very much.
You have very well set the tone of the program.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, sir. So, Maria and Anna, its floor is yours.
Will you manage the slides from your side, or would you like me to do a screen share and manage them from mine?
I think if you do them again, if
Sure, yeah, I will do that. Okay, 1 second, sorry.
Okay, so thank you so much, Sanjay, for that very kind introduction. And you are extremely modest. That was a wonderful context setting. And if you can deliver that without feeling you have carried out adequate preparation, then I'm very jealous. And thank you also to you, Sanjay, for the immense amount of work that you have put into organising today. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful colleague, collaborator and friend. Thank you also to the Universities of Bangalore and Pune for supporting this collaboration. And for today's event, we're obviously particularly grateful to the University of Bangalore, which has been incredibly supportive of the project.
Anna, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Anna, your voice is cracking. It's not clear. We are not able. Yeah, please.
Turn my video off. Oh. Maria, maybe, Sakshi?
You're a little echoey, Anna.
Yeah, I wonder if they do the slides at their end then.
Mic is quite close. It seems that.
Your mic seems to be very close to you.
Oh,
Maria's voice is very clear.
is that better now?
Try again, Anna.
Is that better now?
Now it looks.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Should I start again? I'm going to start again.
Yeah, start again, Anna.
So, first of all, I want to say an enormous thank you to Sanjay for his introduction to Maria and myself, and also for the enormous amount of work that has gone into organising today. Sanjay, you are a wonder of the modern age. We are so grateful to you for all the work you have put in to this project over the last 5.5 years, but particularly for organising today. And your opening words did not reveal any lack of preparation. You are such an expert on the topic that it's at your fingertips, and we are very grateful to be working with you. Thank you. We also want to thank the universities of Bangalore and Pune for collaborating with us, for supporting the collaboration between us and Sanjay, who has been our lead scholar in India. And particularly today, we want to thank the University of Bangalore, which has been immensely supportive and flexible. So we are very conscious and appreciative of that. You have our thanks. And for today's event, we also want to thank the collaborating disabled people's organisations, the National Federation of the Blind. I have to say I'm a very active member of that organisation in the UK as a blind person myself. And Mithra, Jyothi, which sounds an incredible organisation too, and I very much look forward to finding out more about the work of both those organisations in the future. And enormous thanks to the Deputy Director for being there and for your words of support and all the work that you are doing to make Karnataka an inclusive environment and society. Thank you so much. And we have to say thank you too to the wonderful performers. Your voices were stunning, and after today's event, I'm going to start to practice dancing with my white cane. So I suspect there might be a few injuries on the way. And finally, thank you to all of you for being there. We also really appreciate the time you're giving to this important issue, but on a weekend especially, it means a lot. Thank you. And we hope that today isn't, is just one point on a journey, and that it's not a case of us just delivering information. We really hope to be, through Sanjay and colleagues there, providing tools that will help with the work that you are all doing. And I also want to thank Maria Maria is, as Laura Demon mentioned, she's a friend of Sanjay's and a friend of mine and a wonderful colleague, and she has been working on this project from the beginning, and she is going to share the talk today, so we'll be taking it in turns. So if we go to slide 3, please. So an overview of today's talk. So first of all, why accessibility matters, just to pick up on some of the things Sanjay's already mentioned. And second, an introduction to the Inclusive Public Space project, which Maria will provide. And then we have 3 sections on emerging findings. We've divided that into 3. The first will focus on issues relating to infrastructure. the second on issues relating to interactions of disabled people with other road users, and the third will relate to reporting and enforcement. So moving on to the first of those sections then, why accessibility matters. So I've got three reasons on this slide here. The first is probably the least important reason in many ways. It's that it's legally required. So it's legally required by international law, as Sanjay has mentioned. It's legally required by the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, with which India was very heavily involved and has remained so. Article 9 of that treaty is focused on accessibility, and it requires all state parties to take steps to ensure accessibility, not just in the public sector, but also to ensure that private sector operators include accessibility in everything they do, which is open to the public or provided to the public. And because of that treaty, well, there were national level laws already before the CRPD, but the CRPD has really acted as a catalyst for national law and policy on accessibility all over the world, including in India. So as I think it was the Deputy Director mentioned, and Sanjay mentioned, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act is a key piece of legislation, and that includes various provisions on accessibility. So that's the first reason that it's legally required. The second reason why accessibility matters is that it makes sensible economic sense. To ensure accessibility. There's an economic cost of not ensuring accessibility, not building it in. People often focus on the cost of making things accessible, and that cost arises mostly when things have been built in a way that isn't accessible in the first place. If accessibility is built in from the outset, there may be marginal costs at that point, but it avoids the need to make adaptations later on. And it's not just the cost of the installation that matters, it's the cost of lost business, lost opportunity that should be factored in to assessments of economic cost. So I was looking at this before the lecture started today and found a couple of studies. It's very difficult to find comprehensive studies of this economic cost of inaccessibility. Just one example, UK businesses were estimated to have lost the value of over £400 million sterling because of their websites being inaccessible, and that was just during the years of the pandemic. So over £400 million lost because of inaccessible websites alone, and that doesn't include the costs, the ongoing costs of not having accessible physical environments or accessible information or communication structures of other kinds. So if you could just imagine the cost of having a shop which has a step to get into it, or which has narrow aisles, that won't be accessible to people who have mobility impairments, and therefore they're excluding a potentially valuable market. And I think it's important here to note that disability isn't a static condition. It's not a sharp division between those people in society who are disabled and those who aren't. everybody is likely to experience disability at some point during their lives. It's already estimated that 20% of the world's population is disabled, but over the life course, as we get older, we're all likely to experience increasing degrees of impairment. Okay, and I'm going to, and then the third reason, the last of the three reasons I've got here, is the human cost. And I think this is where I want to just build on some of the examples that Sanjay mentioned. And I'm going to do this with a few cases. And I'm not interested in these cases for the moment because of their legal significance, but because of the factual scenarios they illustrate, and just as ways in for you to exercise your imagination about the impact, the human cost of inaccessibility. So the first of these cases is that of Rhodes versus, of Bernard versus Enfield, which is a British case, an English case, from 2002. It was a legally significant case, but for reasons I won't go into. And it concerned an inaccessible house. So it was a house provided to a family, a couple who had 6 children. The mother had had a stroke, and after that she was a wheelchair user. And they needed public housing because they were unable to afford to continue paying the mortgage on a privately owned house. So they needed public housing. And the house they were given had a step to get into it. So that meant that the mother couldn't bring her wheelchair inside. It was too narrow to bring her wheelchair inside. She spent most of her time sitting in a bath chair. She couldn't use the bathroom unassisted because there was a step to get into that. She couldn't use the kitchen. She enjoyed cooking, but she couldn't use the kitchen because it was also inaccessible. She couldn't get up the stairs to kiss her children goodnight. So she and her husband spent what ended up being a period of 20 months, so over a year and a half, in this house. He had to carry her to use the bathroom. He had to carry her to get in and out of the house. She wasn't able to answer the door if she was in the house on her own. The impact on that, the husband ended up with back problems because of having to carry his wife. She ended up soiling herself several times a day because of the inaccessibility of the bathroom. The impact on them as individuals, the impact on the family was heartbreaking, immense. The second case I want to mention is Rhodes versus Central Trains, and this was a case about transport, railway transport, and it was brought by a wheelchair user. Mr. Rhodes couldn't get from one side of the station to the other. So from there were 2 platforms. It was only a little station, but he couldn't get from one platform to the other platform, which he needed to do in order to change trains to get from his home to the town, the bigger town where he worked and shopped, without changing platforms. And he couldn't do that in an easy way because the bridge across the platforms had steps and no ramp and no lift. So the way he had to do it was either to travel for about a mile on a very rough road to get round the station, or to travel to take an extra train to a different station where there was an accessible way of getting across to a different platform. So if you can just imagine there, the impact on him was a considerable extra time on his journey, and also expense if he had to go to the extra the other train station, or pain of travelling on this rough road, because that caused him pain in his wheelchair. So the human cost on him was again significant. The next case I want to mention is a case that came before the CRPD committee, which is Ljunggren versus Sweden. And this was a case that concerned work. So it was a very talented blind computer programmer. Sorry, I can't remember what anyway, I think she was a computer programmer, but she was applying for a job with the Department for Social Security in Sweden as a blind person. And she was found to be the best qualified person for the job, but she was turned down because the internal computer system was not accessible to blind people. And it was held to be too expensive to make it accessible or to pay someone to support her in using it. So she ended up not having a job, even though she was the best qualified person for it, because of inaccessible intranet systems. And then the last case I want to mention, the last example, is Rowley versus the Cabinet Office, another UK case. This is from 2023, and it was brought by a deaf woman who was pregnant during the pandemic. She lived on her own. She was going to be a single parent, and she'd had quite a few miscarriages before this pregnancy, which she was delighted about. She was delighted about being pregnant and very much wanting to avoid another miscarriage or any health problems that could risk a successful birth. So at the time of the pandemic, she was wanting to know everything she could about how to keep safe, as we all were. And so watching, I should say, because she was deaf, watching the public health broadcasts that were being made by government and by the science advisors during the pandemic. These were televised, and most of them had sign language interpretation. And she was a sign language user. She struggled with subtitles. Sign language was her preferred language, her first language. There were several of these broadcasts that didn't have sign language, and that was what this case concerned. She felt she was missing out on vital information because she couldn't understand. She knew important information was being given out, but it wasn't in a way that was accessible to her. So that's the impact on worry and concern about health because of inaccessible health information. But as Sanjay mentioned, the focus of today is the inaccessibility of street environments for pedestrians with disabilities. And we're all of us pedestrians at some point, even if it's just to get a short distance. But this is an issue that particularly impacts, perhaps, on people who have less resource to pay for public transport, for private transport, and therefore of pedestrians more often, or for longer distances. Okay, so this is where I'm going to hand over to Maria for the next section.
All right, I will, I'll start my video. However, if there's too much of a lag, just let me know and I will turn off my video. I will just tell you just now a little bit about the Inclusive Public Space Project. Now, the main focus of the project is equal access to streetscapes and systems for persons with disabilities. Now, against this backdrop, it has three broad aims. The first is experiential. And this is to deepen understanding of what pedestrians with disabilities, but also older pedestrians, parents, and caregivers what it is that they experience as exclusionary or disadvantageous. Now, the second aim is legal. So this is to explore the law's role in creating barriers in street environments and also how the law can be used in order to prevent or challenge such barriers. The third aim is perceptual. So this is to challenge perceptions that this issue is a marginal one and to raise awareness of the impact and significance of street exclusion. Now, the project has been taking place in 5 countries, and those are India, obviously, as well as Kenya and the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and the US. Now, in each of our countries, there are different types of work that have taken place. The first is there's been an analysis done of relevant law and policy in each of the countries. So this is looking at national law as well as local law and policy. And this work was conducted by Professor Jain and his team in India. And then another aspect of the project is data collection that involves pedestrian participants. So this was done in 2 cities in each of the 5 countries, and it involved one-to-one interviews with the pedestrians, as well as filming in order to create some films that I'll talk about in a minute. And it also involved the recording of audio stories, stories told by the participants themselves. And then the last type of work was data collection involving stakeholders, and this was at the national level for the most part. Now, there was 3 groups of stakeholders that we interviewed in each of the countries. And so these were people that are lawyers or involved in legal work. This is people involved in policy or planning, and then those who are engaged in activism or campaigning work. Now, in terms of the outputs of what is coming out of the project, is that in addition to the usual type of academic outputs, academic publications, for each of the countries, we are producing a range of tools that are intended to raise awareness and build solidarity around the issue of inaccessible, exclusionary pedestrian environments. Now, the first of these is guides. Now, these are based on the legal report written by Professor Jain and his team, as well as the empirical data gathered. And we've put together 2 drafts of 2 guides for India and the other countries as well. And one of these is aimed at raising awareness amongst members of the public about things that they can do and are sometimes legally obligated to do in order to reduce barriers, obstacles, and other hazards for pedestrians with disabilities. And we plan to make this an online guide whereby somebody reading the guide online would be able to link to some of the short films that we're developing that specifically illustrate or show the points being made. The other guide is a short guide that's aimed at pedestrians with disabilities and also other pedestrians that have encountered obstacles or barriers when using streets. And so it speaks to how they might take different types of action to help remove the barrier and or bring about change. Now, for these guides, we do need input on them and help and support from others when it comes to finalizing them and having people use them. So getting them out and being able to distribute them. So please let us know if this is something that you would be interested in working with us on. Now, we have also produced a series of short films for each of the 5 countries. The documentary style films come from concerns raised in the interviews with pedestrian participants, and the footage shot and used in them is of the streets and problems identified by the interviewees. And we'll show one of these later on in this talk. And then the virtual reality style films are based on the journey of a pedestrian participant. Now, virtual reality style films are interactive in that when you're watching them on a laptop or on a desktop, you can move the mouse around in order to change the perspective and gives the impression that you can decide where to look when watching. And they can also be viewed on VR headsets and in a dedicated cave facility at the university here in Leeds that creates an immersive experience. So we will also be showing one of these later in the talk. Now, as to the India focus. So in India, as I said, for each of the countries, we conducted the interviews with pedestrians in 2 cities. And in India, this was in Pune and Delhi. And in regards to our pedestrian participants, thanks to the hard work of Sanjay and his team, we interviewed the interviewers recruited and talked to 81 pedestrian participants, 37 in Pune and 44 in Delhi. There was almost an even split between male and female, slightly more women than men, but close to being even. Now, of these 81 participants, the vast majority identified as being disabled, over 80%. And mobility and visual impairments were far and away the most commonly identified type of disability. Although several of our participants also identified as being neurodiverse or having specific health conditions, and several of them identified as having multiple impairments. Around 10% of the pedestrian participants identified as parents or caregivers, and another roughly 10% identified as older people. However, for the pedestrian participants, several of them did identify as belonging to multiple categories. So, for example, several were both identified as being both disabled and as an older person. Now, in terms of our stakeholder participants, we interviewed 30 stakeholders from across India. And of these 30, around 9 had experience of working in policymaking or planning. About 11 had experience of working in activism or campaigning. And 10 of them were lawyers or worked in the legal field. Now, again, these categories are not mutually exclusive, and many stakeholder participants fell into more than one category. In particular, several of them identified as being a planner and an activist. But how we categorize them reflects their primary identification. So now that I've given you an introduction to, a quick introduction at that, to the project and a little bit about the work that we've done in India, I'd like to now hand back to Anna as she is going to present some of our emerging findings. So Anna, back to you.
Thank you so much. You can hear me, can't you?
Yes, we can. We can
Yes.
see you. I don't know if you want to turn on your...
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I'll turn myself off though while you talk.
Okay, thank you, Maria. So now we're on to emerging findings, and as I mentioned, there are 3. We've divided this into 3 sessions. And just before I start on this, just to These are emerging findings from our initial analysis of the data, the interviews that we've carried out as a team. We would be very grateful for any thoughts you have in the audience there about your own experiences, whether there are things that are really important to you that haven't been captured as much as you think maybe they should have been. So yeah, please do afterwards let us know of anything of your reflections on these emerging findings, and if there is anything extra or different we should be thinking about, or if you think these match your experience. So I'm going to start then thinking about the problems that people identified that related to infrastructure in particular. And I should say that these are impossible to separate completely from those which Maria will consider in a minute, which concern interaction, but just as a broad way of organising, it's helpful. So first of all, lack of footpaths. There were quite a few participants in both Delhi and Pune, as well as stakeholders who mentioned this problem, that sometimes there just are no footpaths. That happens as gap, so you can go from a place where there is a footpath and then there's a gap and then there is none, until you can pick up another one again sometime later. This was also a problem mentioned in some of our other countries or cities, in particular where it was a rapidly growing city. So Atlanta in the United States mentioned this problem a lot, as did participants in Nairobi and Mombasa in Kenya. It tended to be mentioned less in the cities where we carried out work in the UK and the Netherlands, where they were more established. Another problem was that where there were footpaths, they were in poor condition. They were often broken and uneven for various reasons. Sometimes construction work, which I'll come to in a second. Sometimes vegetation, tree roots were breaking up the pavements. Sometimes just general disrepair. And poor condition of footpaths was a problem mentioned in every other city as well. The causes for it varied, but it was a problem everywhere. The third problem was drainage, particularly seasonal, so it was worse in the rainy seasons. And this was an issue in Nairobi as well. So there were issues of flooding that were mentioned by participants in Delhi and Pune. But there were ongoing issues around maintenance of and the design of manholes, and the fact that manhole covers were often missing, creating a massive danger for people, particularly people with visual impairments, who might end up falling into these because of not seeing them, although they are a risk to everybody, disabled or not. Footpath obstructions as a generic heading. This was an issue in every country. The nature of the obstructions were often quite similar. So things like bins, vegetation, furniture, street furniture. In India, some of the particularities of this were market stalls. That happened in Kenya as well, but less so in other countries. The height and the width of footpaths, so they tended to be very high. That was the general point that was made in amongst the Indian participants we had. And sometimes they were very narrow, so it was difficult, for instance, for a blind person to be guided by somebody else because the pavement was too narrow. Sorry, I use the term pavement as a default. I should say footpath, but hopefully you'll be familiar with pavement. The height of pavements, the fact that they were too high, was also mentioned in Ruby a lot. It's often a consequence of drainage, trying to get out of wetter roads. In the UK, interestingly, the fact that footpaths were too low was mentioned a lot. Too low to be detected easily using long cane. Indeed, this is a recent case last year. International guidelines on the height of pavements or footpaths was challenged. It was an unsuccessful case, but the basis of it was they were too low to be detected by people using long canes. Lack of dropped curbs and tactile marking. So dropped curbs are the ramps which enable people to access footpaths from the road or access the road from the footpath without having to climb up the high step to get onto the curb. Those are particularly important for people with any kind of mobility impairment, because without them, people are either stuck on the road or stuck on the footpath. And it can be very unsafe having travel on the road, moving traffic. And the participants mentioned that there weren't enough, that there were often footpaths with no usable dropped curb. Others mentioned the fact that when there were dropped curbs, they were often in bad condition. So they were not usable because they'd not been properly maintained or they'd been broken. And they are vital to the journeys of wheelchair users. So wheelchair users will have to plan extremely long routes or risk going on road with other traffic if there aren't sufficient dropped curbs. So it puts them at risk. Tactile markings are essential by means. So to mark steps, if there isn't a high curb, to mark the difference between the footpath and the road, tactile mark or to mark crossing points. These are very important in streetscapes, and there is guidance on them, I think internationally, because they represent a compromise. They're not so easy for people with mobility impairments because they are uneven by necessity, but for people with visual impairment, they are vital for safety in very many instances. Lack of benches. This was an issue that was mentioned by a few participants in India, particularly important in streets where there is a gradient, but important everywhere, resting places for people who have limited energy or for whom travelling is stressful and just need a break every so often. Benches themselves can be an obstruction on footpaths, so they need to be situated carefully and designed carefully so that they can be detected by people using long canes. It's very easy for a cane to go underneath the bench and to end up, the blind person end up falling over the bench as a result. So they need to have markings that go down to ground level that would be detectable by people using long canes. And finally, construction work. So in a way, construction work feeds into all of these other problems. But it was a very commonly mentioned issue in India, as it was indeed in all of the cities where we carried out empirical work. It was particularly problematic where it happened quickly or without adequate notice, particularly to people who need to plan their routes, so blind people, wheelchair users, who may find that a route that they've been used to using has changed, and therefore they need to find an alternative way around. It was also particularly problematic, and this was an issue that was mentioned a lot in India, where there weren't sufficient safety barriers around construction work, so it became a hazard. And another issue related to construction work in India was the storage of building materials. So footpaths were often used as a place to store materials that were used for construction or tools used for construction work, which itself then created a barrier to the footpath and disabled pedestrians. And this is where we're just going to show you the virtual reality film. So as Maria mentioned, these are interactive films. If you were operating them yourself, I don't know who's operating them there in Bangalore, but maybe you could just use the mouse to show how the perspective changes if you use the mouse. So it's as if you're wearing the camera that was used, you're the person wearing that camera, so you can look around as that person could have done. This film has audio description in it, so those of us who can't see will be able to work out what's going on too. Thank you very much.
Should I stop my screen share so you can show the film?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Which film I should show now?
This is
Display?
the virtual reality one.
Okay.
Oh. I will share my screen again. Okay, everyone can hear me okay on that end, I hope. So thank you, Sanjay, for sharing the VR film. So now moving back to our emerging findings. The next category that we'll discuss is interaction with other road users. So, there we go. The first of these is interactions between pedestrians and cars and other heavy vehicles. And this was a recurring theme in India as well as other countries. And one of the themes was the speed and proximity of moving cars and other types of vehicle. Now, this was a particular concern for people trying to cross the road, particularly when the signal, if there was a signal, had finished. But there were many stories of near collisions and problems caused by vehicles driving on the footpath. One of our blind participants told us of several incidents in which the long cane she was using to find her way, where it was broken by passing vehicles, leaving her stranded without her mobility device. Problems were also caused where cars were parked. So this is accounts of footpaths being made unpassable by parked cars. And for wheelchair users, routes too often, became inaccessible because cars and other vehicles were parked either across dropped curbs or on ramps to get on and off the footpath. Issues around pavement parking, that's what we call it in the UK. That was a concern raised here as well. Issues, similar type issues were in relation to bikes, scooters, rickshaws, so other types of transport devices as well. Another common difficulty experienced by many of our disabled participants was navigating footpaths that were crowded or cluttered. And this was often linked to vendors selling produce on the footpath or very close to the footpath and causing an obstruction on the footpath. And there was a frequent references were also made to noise and to crowds associated with festivals. Issues around blocking of footpaths and vendors was also a common theme in interviews in Kenya as well. So I'm just going to show, this is just one picture that I'm showing here it's a still shot from one of our films that aims to show some of the issues with the vendors and part of the pavements being blocked there. Another common theme was interactions with other road users, and I have examples. This came up in the India interviews, and this one is actually best explained through one of our films. So the last one that we just showed you was one of our virtual reality style films. However, this one that we're going to show you now is one of the documentary style films. So I will stop my screen share and I'll let you show the documentary style film. And so this is the animals ones actually. We can't hear the audio online, but I think
Has the film finished?
No. It's okay. I don't think it started.
Will you tell me when it's done, Maria?
I will, don't worry. So I just say one comment about the film. So the one that was just shown, that was one of our documentary style films, and that one was in English without audio description. However, all of our films, when they come out, both virtual reality style and documentary style, will be available with audio description as well as in English, Marathi, and Hindi as well. So on that note, I will now turn back to Anna for her to present our last section on emerging findings, those relevant to reporting and enforcement. Back to you, Anna. Just let me share my screen again. Yeah, you're good to go. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, we couldn't hear the audio online, so I hope that worked okay for all of you. And as Maria says, they will be available in other languages. I also want at this stage, it feels like the right moment, to thank you all for being willing to do this in English. I feel it's a huge, reasonable accommodation for us. And sorry that our Hindi isn't up to participating fully in Hindi. Okay, so the last section on emerging findings then, it was an issue. These were points that were raised by the pedestrians we spoke to, and also by very many of the stakeholders, especially the legal stakeholders that we spoke to, and the activist stakeholders. So there was a clear implementation gap, as there was in all the countries. So there were legal commitments, as Sanjay mentioned at the beginning, in India to accessibility, backed up by some policy initiatives, but it was felt by everybody, as it was in all countries, that there was a massive implementation gap. There was one of the reasons for this was felt to be a lack of awareness of rights, and that went for the disabled and older people involved, but it also went for other people involved in making the system work: construction workers, administrators, and judges, around what the rights were around accessibility in this context. So a lack of awareness of rights was one issue, and then linked to that was a lack of awareness amongst people affected by these barriers of how to bring a complaint if they did want to, if they felt strongly about it. How could they bring a complaint? Where would they take it to? Who would they talk to? And it was felt that the structures were often quite confusing, especially when it involved like construction work where there might be multiple actors. But even outside that, some of the problems might be caused by a member of the public or a market stall operator, or was it the obligation of the local administration, municipality, or at a higher level? So where do you go to with these sorts of complaints was a big barrier to taking action. And I think linked to that is the fact that in all countries, there were comments to the effect of, although this impacts my life, it's one I can usually find a way around. There are risks, it's stressful going out, but I don't have to necessarily go out. So there were high costs to the individual, the human costs were high, but unlike employment or education, where there were clearer avenues to taking redress, and maybe there were more financial benefits to accessing the system in question, people didn't feel the same urgency to take action on this kind of issue. Another point that was mentioned was the inaccessibility of complaint mechanisms. Oh, sorry, before I move on to that one, I want to just touch on the point that was mentioned earlier on, I think by Sanjay, about the Disability Commissioner. So that was a point that was raised in a lot of our interviews too, particularly with stakeholders, about the fact that seems to be the obvious place, but because they lack the teeth or the power to do much against it, there's no point making complaints there. So inaccessibility of complaint mechanisms, a point was made by many of our interviewees around the fact that if you did want to bring a complaint, sometimes the systems for doing it, even if you could find out what they were, would involve processes that would raise accessibility barriers. Might be online communication, or it might more often be going physically to a building that could be inaccessible, or the route to it would be inaccessible. And that included many court buildings and the route to them, or lawyers' offices. And then finally, the cost of bringing cases. So if you did want to bring legal action, and that isn't the only form of action, action could take the form of just reporting the problem to a municipality, or it could be joining an organisation like the wonderful organisations represented here today, who are taking action, collective action on disability-related issues. But if you did want to bring a court case, the barriers to that included financial barriers, because although there is public interest litigation, it very rarely seemed to focus on issues of accessibility. So taking actions that were privately funded could end up being very expensive, and that was obviously a big deterrent. Okay, that brings us to the end of the emerging findings. So I'm going to pass back to Sanjay now, and thank you all for your attention. Thank you very much.
for your wonderful presentation. In between, both of you also briefly surveyed the major findings of the project, and we tried to make the presentation interactive with uh, screening of films. I think, excuse me, if I can have silence, please. Uh, I think one of the major threads which run through your presentation was this, that be it Kenya, US, Netherlands, UK, or India, when it comes to footpaths or when it comes to manholes or height of the footpaths, more or less uh, problems are same. Maybe there is a difference of degree. Similarly, height of footpath or the tactile design, curbs, or protruding wires, trees. Uh, Again, the issue in terms of degrees, of course, the issue compounded in few countries more than maybe in others. Uh, so I must also confess, Anna, that in Bangalore, this is my first event. I've organized so many events, and in Bangalore, this is my first event as a professor. And I hope that I have been able to live to the expectation of Bangaloreans as well as uh, the project team of IPS, because they repose a lot of faith in Indian team, and they were all praises India. So hopefully we have lived to your expectation here in Bangalore as well. On this note, uh, let's keep the floor open for a few questions. Uh, Maybe we can have what is time now?
It's 5 o'clock.
So we may have around 15 minutes, right, for questions. If you have any questions, please put your questions. Maybe we can ask Mittal sir to roll the ball.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. This is Harish Kotian.
Just a minute, Harish. First, let me speak Mittal sir, then I will give it to you, Harish. Right? Give mic to
I was first of all.
sir. I will give you mic. Volunteers, please pass on the mic.
Yes, I got it. So, thank you very much, Dr. Sanjay. First of all, I would like to congratulate the NFB Mithra Jyothi and National Law School, Bangalore, for organizing such an uh, informative program wherein what needs to be done in the area of ensuring accessibility for persons with disabilities. Apart from that, I would like to thank Professor Lawson and our colleague for such a wonderful presentation, though due to certain technological issues, many of us might not have been able to understand what she was trying to say because of some issue and some other problems. I would suggest or request Dr. Sanjay to put the lecture on the website of the university or on his own website, if he has one, from where people could download the lecture and then listen at their convenience and understand what actually this University of Leeds is trying to do to ensure accessibility for persons with disabilities. See, there somebody started saying about some policies, etc. To the best of my knowledge, the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities in the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, with the support of CCPD, the other PWD departments, etc., they have come up with very good guidelines for building built-in environment as well as for stations, bus stands, airports, etc. I would like to know from uh, Professor Lawson, when they were there in Delhi, if they were, Have they visited the metro stations? Some of the metro stations I am told, and I have also seen one or two of them, they have been made, I wouldn't say fully because fully kuch hota, fully there is nothing. 100% nothing is accessible anywhere in the world. But to a large extent, those stations are accessible. Similarly, the airports also and a couple of platforms at New Delhi railway station, they are accessible for persons with disability. Though I would say that anything can be accessible today, but may not be accessible tomorrow because rapid changes keep on taking place, due to which accessibility gets adversely affected. Similarly, the new buildings which are coming up uh, in the area of government constructions, they are accessible to a largest, despite low economic uh, 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 budget availability. Still, things are improving, and ever since the Persons with Disability Act in 1995 came, 1996, the work on disability or promoting accessibility, education, and other things for persons with disability is improving. May not be very fast, at a faster pace. So, my what I want to ask is whether has she seen the guidelines which Government of India has come out on the issue of accessibility, particularly the built-in environment, accessibility of stations, etc. Airport. Thank you.
Okay, Anna, would you like to take the question, or we should take one or two more and then we will address?
I don't mind, Sanjay. I'm happy. I'm happy with whichever approach you think best.
Okay, then maybe, yeah, maybe we'll take two more and then you can respond. So now I will request Harish to intervene briefly. Harish, Anna is very one of our techno savvy friend. And I think Reserve Bank of India was very proud of him, Central Bank of India, and they 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 were very happy in keeping all their softwares in the custody of Harish.
Thank you very much, Sanjay, and good evening, everyone. I would just have a very pointed question. That is, we know there are standards for built environment. We have standards for ICT, but I'm not very sure that standards exist for road and street accessibility. And if they do exist, could you just touch upon it and share about it, and also let us know how you also sustain it and enforce the rules coming out of road and street accessibility. Thank you.
Okay, maybe one more and then we will take the questions. Is there?
So good evening. This is Shreyas, Advocate Shreyas Reddy.
Yeah.
So I was recently discussing this the challenge that I faced when I was traveling to and from the High Court and such. So when I was trying to convey this difficulty of our visually impaired, so the roads are not accessible, and when I try reporting the same to the BBMP commissioner, they say, I mean, not quoting, but they say that why should we change this? This is like you guys are in minority. So how do we troubleshoot such kind of attitude barriers, and how do we go about this with such challenges? Thank you.
Yeah. So Anna, maybe first you will intervene, and if required, I will have a few words. Yeah.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you're.
Okay, thank you for those excellent questions. So the first question about the guidelines, the accessibility guidelines, and examples of really good practice on accessibility. I'm really glad you raised those points. Thank you. I haven't seen the guidelines in detail. I have heard about them, and I know that there's been from Professor Jane's work that there's been a big emphasis on the accessibility of public buildings, and I suspect I'm really excited about visiting some of those buildings that you mentioned because they sound very impressive. I do find whenever I go to other countries, I find the airports and often the train stations and places are a lot more accessible than the ones in the UK. We don't seem to like tactile markings, wayfinding for wayfinding in public buildings in the UK, but in big places like airports, I find them in a lot of other countries, and they're incredibly helpful. I don't know whether they're in India too. But I think that point, and I should say as well that our project it was focusing more on identifying current issues that pedestrians were finding problematic, rather than really focusing on examples of very good practice. And that was the same in all the countries. I think it would be really helpful to have another dimension of the project, or a new project which looks at sharing examples of good practice. And I note actually, this might be relevant. The Zero project, which hosts a conference every year in Austria, is, I think, still looking for nominations, for example, of inclusive buildings, to be nominated for international recognition. So I think it might be worth thinking about submitting one of your examples to the Zero project, and I can send details of that separately. So that links to the second question about guidance relating to streets. And I know, again, from Professor Jane, that there is the street manual, which I think includes, that's where relevant guidelines are set out. But I think, from what I remember, that may vary from region to region in how it's implemented, and also in how it's enforced. And I think it's not monitored very carefully, but Sanjay may be able to help me on this. And I do remember some stakeholders saying that even if the roads are designed accessibly in the first instance, construction work, maintenance work happens, and then that leaves the roads in an inaccessible state. So it's very easy for something that started off as accessible to become inaccessible if everybody isn't maintaining it to the same accessible standards. And then the last question on attitude around this issue, that's, I think, a question for all of us. What do we do? What can we do to change this attitude that it's just a minority problem? It's a problem for everybody. I think it was the deputy director mentioned this at the beginning, or was it one of the other speakers? That it is the accessibility, the inclusiveness of streets is an issue that affects everybody. It impacts people with disabilities and older people more, but it affects everybody's quality of life. And I think we should all share ideas and learn from each other about ways of getting that message across, and the importance economically, humanly, legally of making these places accessible. Sanjay, would you mind helping on the issue of streets, the accessibility guidelines for streets?
Yeah, no, but before I have my say, Deputy Director Madam wants to say something.
Yeah, for the mitigation of disability, technology has a wide role to play nowadays. Sensor related aids and appliances are much needed for the disabled persons so that everything can be accessible. So that's how the industry has to develop the things. So we should encourage such industries. We definitely welcome this. That's how if the government makes it possible, that would be more helpful.
So far as guidelines, street guidelines or road guidelines are concerned, as I was trying to speak when I was setting the context, in India, focus is on buildings. And when you read Renu Adalkar's piece, she very rightly says, but what about roads leading to the buildings? How to walk on those roads? So we need to have a holistic approach towards accessibility. Uh, so focus is on showcasing, but showcasing is indeed important. Grandstanding is important, but what about achieving the real goals? And why focus is on buildings and not on roads? Because there is inadequate representation. Nothing about us without us is not happening there. Then the second point is top-down approach to the accessibility. The standards on accessibility must come from Delhi, whereas the reality is each landscape is different, and if you are going from one state to the another, the local situation is different, and therefore, depending upon one's own understanding, there have been set of guidelines. For example, uh, Maharashtra has asked all the districts to come out with accessible street guidelines. And in our report, we have discussed Pune Municipal Corporation guidelines. Moreover, for example, Indian Road Congress has developed some road accessibility guidelines. But I think again the problem is top-down approach. I think we need to understand that accessibility is not only about buildings, ramps, and gadgets, but accessibility is about walkability. Unless or until I am made walkable, accessibility cannot be achieved. Right? So accessibility is all about walkability, and therefore our focus in this project is on pedestrians. As a pedestrian, can I walk freely on a particular road? And in Mumbai, for example, a petition is already going on. Jamshed Mistry, who was in Pune, one of the stakeholders, he is amicus in that litigation. For example, in many cities, including Bangalore, also I've seen in Majestic Street, there is a beeper, while crossing the road. So there are models here and there. It's not that everything is totally pessimistic. And as Mithra sir said, we need to be optimistic because uh, we are. I don't say that we are a minority, but we are definitely not majority, right? So that's a fact, and therefore we have to sensitize the majority that please make us the part of the mainstream, make us the part of the humanity, right? Just a minute. So this is my response. Now, maybe two questions, two last questions, then we can wrap up. Yeah. Yeah, one is her, and then the person who. Yes. Sanjay sir, this is Veeresh. Veeresh, before that, let's give opportunity to women. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just a minute, you take my piece so that Anna can hear you.
Yes. Here is not question. Sambar road is very accessibility in the commercial street. Even if you see the racecourse road and Taj West Total Road, and if you see that the road is tactile is also there and footpath also is good. But they are not giving, as he said, minority. The huge population is there for the person with disability, but it's not raised the voice and lack of awareness. The lack of awareness, the attitude of negative towards is increasing. That as Madam mentioned is the one of the budget is I think budget is not made because 39 department is there. In 9 department, 5% budget. Overall total budget they mentioned to use the 5% budget for the disability sectors. Why we can't push that and make the accessibility to creating the awareness?
So
Thank you.
I get your point that your yeah. So your name, please.
My name is Devikala.
Pardon.
Devikala.
Devika. Okay. Are you a student or a
In APT, sir. The Association of People with
oh,
Disabilities.
wonderful. So I agree that as therefore I was trying to say, if airports are accessible, we are happy, no problem. They should be accessible. But what about railway station and bus stands, right? Because railway stations and bus stands are the places where bulk of the majority of the people with disability have to navigate through, right? So therefore, I was trying to link accessibility with walkability. Accessibility with leading life as a normal person, right? A quote unquote normal person, just like a normal person. Uh, yeah, Viresh. Just take my. Okay, same point. Okay, take mic, please.
Uh, I want to speak with our madam. ಮೇಡಮ್ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ಬೋದಲ್ವಾ? ಮೇಡಮ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಏನಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಬಜೆಟ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಲ್ವಾ, ಇವಾಗ ನೋಡಿ ಸಿಎಂ ನಗರೋತ್ಥಾನ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ರಿಲೀಸ್ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಮತ್ತೆ 5% ಅದ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ ಅದೇ ತರಾನೇ ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಬಳಕೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಆರಾಮಾಗಿ ನಾವು ಈ ಸ್ಟ್ರೀಟ್ ಆಕ್ಸೆಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ರೋಡ್ ಆಕ್ಸೆಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಮೇಡಮ್. ಮತ್ತೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದೇನಪ್ಪಾ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ ದಾವಣಗೆರೆ ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆಗಿತ್ತು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈಗ ರೋಡ್ ಕ್ರಾಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ದು ಮಿಡ್ಲ್ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ ಹುಬ್ಳಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಆ ಕಡೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಿಡ್ಲ್ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದರಿಂದ ನಾವು SP ಅವರಿಗೆ ಇದು ರಿಕ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ವಿ, ಟೆಲಿಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ದಿವಸದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ ಗೆ ರೋಡ್ ಕ್ರಾಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ ಅವಾಗ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಒಂದು ಅಡಿಷನಲ್ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಗೆ ಇದು ಸೊಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಸಿಗ್ಲೇಬೇಕು ಅಂತ. ಈ ಸರ್ ಬೀಪ್ ಸೌಂಡ್ ಅದು ಊಟ ಅಂತ ಕರೀತಾರೆ, ಅದನ್ನ ಅರೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡಿಸಿದ್ರು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಸ್ಮಾರ್ಟ್ ಸಿಟಿ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಮಾರ್ಟ್ ಸಿಟಿ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್, ಸೊ ಅದನ್ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬಹುದು. ಬಜೆಟ್ ಏನು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಆಗಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ನನ್ನ ರಿಕ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದು, ನಿಮ್ ಕಡೆ ಒಂದು ಲೆಟರ್ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ.
Yeah. Can you answer in English so that
Yes, yes. What it is uh, budget is. I can't say budget is not a constraint. Budget is a constraint at a time, but continuous efforts, continuous plans mitigate this problem. Can mitigate this problem. So that's how the government has to work. Government is working also. Once for all, everything can't be changed. Okay. So definitely we have plans to make the roads accessible for disabled persons and all those things.
let's not talk over her. No, she's answering, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like uh, escalators are there in many malls, airports, and all those things. So if it is made in the signals, escalators in the signals for the benefit of the disabled persons, so this project also can be taken up. So there are many ways to, but step by step, everything will be possible.
So, as if I have understood the question correctly, the question was regarding allocation of 5% budget and whether the government is spending the money. I think if government is not spending the money, we have to politely tell the government to spend it. Right, madam is there, and that's why we are here, right, Girish? So, in a spirit of camaraderie, we have to take the things. And let me tell you that budget is the issue is most of the times not about budget, but the issue is how to spend money. And therefore, she's right that if you don't have schemes and plans and policies, budget cannot be spent, even though budget may be there. So I think there is a greater need to have a coordination of NGOs and the government. NGOs must continuously harp on the government the need to spend money for the right causes. For example, in Pune, I remember government used to say that okay, we spend all our money on accessibility for providing concessions, travel concessions to the people with disabilities, and then we had to correct them saying okay, but why you are spending entire money on travel concession? It is important that you also spend some money on making road accessible, on making buses accessible, on making bus stations and railway stations accessible. So point is taken, and she'll also trying to say, and will impress upon her continuously that please ensure that the 5% budget which is allocated uh, must be spent for the purposes for which it is allocated. So I think, uh, friends, there may be many questions. Uh, no, I can only give now the final word to Gautam sir because of lack of time. Because Anna is also, I mean, me and Anna, we are in same boat last 15-20 days, and I think she has to organize another conference. We took to her some respite now. But Gautamji, being a senior veteran from the disability, I mean, let's ask him to let's have his final word on the issue. Right. I'm sorry, I can't accommodate everybody.
Hello. Actually, very quickly, I know that we are running behind the time. Very quickly, I would like to connect to Didi Madam on this issue of the accessibility. As this is no doubt that the budget is also an important component to ensure the accessibility. But at the same time, it is more than this. This is important that our alertness, our sensitivity, our awareness towards the cause. Madam, if you remember, last month only we had a meeting at your office, and there I draw your attention to one of the provision of the act. It must be the section 43 or 44 that says that the no establishment will be allowed the construction of a public building or completion certificate unless it adhere the harmonized guidelines notified by the central government. And so we have been requesting for last many years to notify this circular to all the establishment by your department, and in that there is no any financial implication to issue that such kind of notification. Secondly, but this notification has not been issued yet. Secondly, as a Professor Mithra sir has pointed out that he cited the example of Delhi, some good work has been done to achieve the accessibility on railway station, metro station, and public buildings. So I would like to ask here that if you can also in position to give the same statement about the in Karnataka last 6-7 years since that act has come. So since then, how many public, in your knowledge, as per your information, how many public buildings have been constructed as per the this harmonized guidelines, accessibility guidelines? If you can give any example of that. So this is the main thing. So my point is that at least it cannot be done in a single day or in a limited time. But it should be started from somewhere. Slowly, if we start slowly, step by step, so we can reach to the destination. So that is my point. I would like to Madam to respond.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gautamji. But we should also be mindful of the fact I think she came here as a chief guest, and maybe she might not have had the idea that she would have so many questions. But
No, no, no.
but
Actually, I am very
just a minute, just a minute. But it is very gracious on her part that she is trying to respond to all our questions, and I would request her to take this question and
Yeah, recently we have issued a circular to all the departments that government buildings, government places must be made accessible to disabled persons. We have issued a circular, sir. Yeah, last month, yes, recently. Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah, we have issued, we have issued.
and mind you, okay, I think we can have a separate meeting, right, with Madam. It seems that she is interested to have a dialogue. So I would request Gautam ji and Madhu ji, NLS will be with you. Why not have a very fruitful and constructive open dialogue with both these officials? I think Commissioner Disability was also supposed to come, but due to some contingency, he could not make it. So Anna, any final thoughts? Quickly, 1 or 2 minutes, or else I will.
Finally, I just would like to add,
Yeah.
if any technology, sensor related technology, aids and appliances. So if he is using a white cane, he can sense the road. So that kind of technology can be adopted means this will be the best solution I feel that we welcome. So if you could suggest such technology, we will support. We will support.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Anna, any last thoughts or?
Yes, thank you, Sanjay. I just want to thank you again personally for your wonderful collaboration, Sanjay. And you are so modest, but you always excel, and it's been a wonderful event. It's so wonderful for me and Maria to hear the energy in the room and the fact that you're going to be having follow-on meetings. I think if the project can initiate that kind of debate and help take it forward, that's a success. That's the most we could hope for. So I'm very, very glad that that's happening, and it's wonderful to have the engagement of the deputy director there in the room. That's the conversations. Good luck for the ongoing conversations, and thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you. Uh, Before I hand over to Asha ji, let me apologize to all those whose expectations we could not fulfill because the program was purely in English. But we will try and have a hybrid mode so that such programs are organized in both English and Kannada. So my apologies. Second point I would like to stress is this, that I could sense there are many questions people have. I would not mind if you people can send me those questions, and I would try to respond to those questions personally and pass on those questions to Anna and even to our deputy director. And these questions would help us generate new ideas. My email ID is sanjay.jain@nls.ac.in. Right. Now, because Asha ji is going to propose a vote of thanks, therefore, let me first thank Asha ji for being such a wonderful strength behind all this behind this entire event. So my heartfelt thank to Asha ji, and I think I leave rest of the formalities to her by way of proposing vote of thanks. Yeah, and after the vote of thanks, of course, don't please join us for a cup of tea. Thank you.
So, firstly, I'd like to thank Professor Anna Lawson and Maria and the entire team, Sanjay, Sakshi, everyone, Sagar, all of you for bringing this event together, and of course, NFB Gautamji, thank you very much. Madhuji, of course, always. And like we were discussing, it was a very fruitful discussion. In fact, all of us have lots of questions, lots of suggestions that we would like to give you, Ashwatthama ma'am. We would love to meet you again and have, like Sanjay said, we'll try and have a nice open discussion and tell you exactly what we face on ground so that you are able to take our suggestions to the higher authorities. So thank you very much. And yes, and Madhuji wants to say something. And before that, let me tell you that there's tea and some snacks outside here downstairs itself. So before you leave, please have. Yes, big hands to all the volunteers. And one,
Asha ji didn't mention, but I want to say thanks to all the staff of Mithra Jyoti. From past 2 3 days, they were working towards it. All the staff, our guard, our cook, everybody was, making sure that nobody should have any problem. Our, people, those who do this housekeeping and all these people, my sincere thanks to all of them because alone, definitely I cannot do any work without them. Thank you.
also videographers and photographers, thank you very much for helping us connect. It was really good. And of course, yeah, our caterers are not here, they're outside, but we'll tell them. So thank you very much. And please move to the and there is coffee and